why don't you start by telling us, what is a dominatrix?
Well, I facilitate role play to men who want to feel powerless or feminine, or they want to regress.
Good.
It's a lot of fun.
You enjoy what you do?
I enjoy it immensely. I'm a retired dominatrix now, and I can only fantasize about spanking men.
Well, I'm sure there are lots of men out there who do fantasize about you spanking them as well. So, well, how do you perceive yourself now? In addition to being a dominatrix, how would you describe yourself, and how do you perceive yourself?
Well, I'm getting older.
You wouldn't know it from looking at you, by the way.
I'm not well either. I'm on a disability. But I consider myself to be an activist, a fighter, a winner, a champion, all the good things that, you know, is necessary to your self-esteem.
Absolutely. And neither you nor I lack for self-esteem.
No, we don't. That's for sure, yeah.
Great. Well, how would you describe your clients? If you had to, would you say there's a typical client that comes to see a dominatrix, or do you have a really wide range of different people?
There's a wide range of different people, but for the most part, Nikki, men who have a disposable income, who'd rather spend $10,000 a year on a dominatrix than on the country club.
Oh, of course. That sounds like a much better use of money to me.
It is, and it's a decadent taste. Not everyone can afford it, but there are men who want just a little spanking, and that's affordable for most people. But the more intense scenarios that involve a lot of equipment and costuming and setting and more participants can determine what the fee is going to be on an hourly basis.
Well, I can imagine that there are some people who have, very simple desires, and they just sort of want to test out a few things here and a few things there. And then you must have clients who are, really really detailed with their fantasies and want, very specific things with very specific outfits and equipment and stuff like that. And,
Indeed, Nikki, it gets really bizarre, but I love it. And the more bizarre, the better. But of course, there's a fine line between consent and assault.
Of course.
And we always have to be careful to listen carefully to what one is requesting us to do to them, and not assume that we know.
So that means that you sort of go over things with your clients before you engage in any sort of session? You talk about what they want to experience first?
Exactly, Nikki. It's a lot different than just throwing off our clothes and jumping into bed. First, there's a lot of details that need to be gone over. Their limits, how they got started, where they want to end up, how they hope the session will go. It's like writing a story. There's a beginning, the body, and then the conclusion. And we want the conclusion to be exactly what they want. Otherwise, they won't come back.
That's
and
true.
For the most part, a dominatrix depends on repeat clientele.
That makes sense. Would you say that it's important to establish a safe word before getting involved in something like this?
Again, that's discussed during the orientation process. What I usually like to do in my houses was to take them through the facility first. The classroom, the baby room, the dungeon, and other parts, the cross-dressers room, and so on and so forth.
So you give them a grand tour of the
grand
premises
tour,
beforehand.
and then I sit them down and I ask them, now, what interests you the most? Or they'll come to me with a letter that maybe they've written, but it's from their mother or their aunt. And they want that scenario based on childhood trauma, or they want to overcome some childhood trauma, and that's where the therapist comes in.
Absolutely.
And that a dominatrix can also be considered a paratherapist, because paraphilias are what we're dealing with.
There are mommy issues and daddy issues and stuff like that.
Nikki,
You help people work through and stuff like that.
Yes, but there are over 750 variations on paraphilia that a dominatrix can cater to. Now, some are very extreme, and I wouldn't go near, like burning and scarification. And you really need to know what you're doing. You should, really have be a nurse or a doctor when you play in that realm. But for the most part, I like the corporal discipline aspects.
So spanking and
I keep
whipping
it plain and simple, and I do a good job that way.
Can you give us a whack whack real quick? There we go. Okay, so some advice for the viewers out there who might be really interested in this. What sort of
I'd
advice?
rather you bend over your desk and let me whack you.
Oh, honey, that's not going to happen. I'm not submissive in the least. Anybody who knows me knows that it's
that
very,
you will,
very difficult
but
to
not
get
in
me
front of
to,
camera?
agree to somebody else's desires unless they fall perfectly in line with my own. But that's, what sort of advice would you give to an aspiring dominatrix? A younger girl who wants to get into the business. What would you suggest to them as a good starting point?
Okay, don't quit your day job.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
That's what they told me when I started the show, so I think it's good advice for anybody.
Oh, no, Nikki, you're going to do really well. You
so.
sparkle. But don't quit your day job. It's absolutely necessary, if you can, to try to apprentice under someone if you're going to go beyond just spanking people or foot worship. That's really easy, doesn't take talent. But to understand the psychodrama and all the other aspects of the S&M scene, you really need to spend a couple of years involved in a house as an employee, which can be quite satisfying. And you do it once or twice a week to supplement your income. And then you start building a clientele. 99% of dominatrices' business is based on repeat customers. And so you really have to know what you're doing and how to treat them, how to respect limits, and the do's and don'ts of the psychology.
Of course. Well, I'm sure that there were many, many disappointed clients out there when you decided to retire, but I'm really glad that you were able to come on the show and tell people a little bit about it. And, all of the advocacy work that you do and all of the fighting that you do to try and restore, rights to people who are involved in, the sex industry in one capacity or another. I think you do a fantastic job, and I'm really honored to have had you on the show today.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to take yet another commercial break, very brief, no more than 2 minutes, and then we will be back with Leonardo Ferraro, who is going to talk to us a little bit about how sometimes our brains can actually get in the way of our quest for happiness. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.